Hello and welcome to this week's Natural Gardening Live with me, Josie Rainbird, your natural gardening coach. Today we are joined by Charlotte from The Sustainable Garden. Charlotte comes from a well-travelled and diverse background with garden design, permaculture and sustainable food production, contributing to her vast horticultural knowledge. Charlotte is here today to talk to us about potager gardens and how they work to support the ecosystem within the garden and to grow more sustainably. So hello Charlotte and welcome to Natural Gardening Live today. So it's great to have you on the show today, Charlotte. Tell me, how did you get into sustainable gardening and permaculture?
Well, thank you for having me. Well, I started when we moved to Devon, really, although I had been studying a lot before we came here. I was a garden designer in London, making small gardens for people, predominantly ornamental gardens in those days. But I was also simultaneously training to be a nutritional therapist, and for a while tried to do both, which was a bit mad. And what I mainly took away from my studies as a nutritional therapist was the somewhat hidden at that stage dangers of the amount of chemical pesticide residues, the effects of plastic packaging, all of those things having a detrimental effect, potentially on our health. And I wanted to, when we moved to Devon, I wanted to be able to grow my own food using no chemicals. And I had studied permaculture, read a lot about it and been to some courses and to that effect. And I was also just very interested in ecology and ways to improve wildlife in the garden, because I was aware that, you know, of course, like many people, the importance of bees. And I hadn't yet studied my master's, but that it actually ended up tying in very closely with what I'd begun already. The first thing I did was to make a big pond, a nature pond, and around that pond I sited a wildflower meadow, and those brought enormous quantities of wildlife, from, you know, insects to birds to butterflies to dragonflies, all sorts of things to the area. And I could see them steadily increasing, and I became more and more interested over those years of how we grow our food and how farming is in this country now. And so I then decided to take the masters during lockdown, and it all played into each other, how by increasing our biodiversity on our land, and having a very well functioning ecology, we can grow things far more effectively, without the need for chemicals. So that was really how it began.
I love that. The idea behind having like the ecology behind it and having everything growing quite symbiotically, that's the right word, together, and making a nicer environment for them to grow, supporting each other. It does make such a difference in the garden, and not just in the garden, but in farmland as well. So the whole idea of it needs to pick up faster, in my opinion. We need to be incorporating this into commercial industries as much as in the garden at home. So definitely, I love that. But it's an amazing way of starting out, especially doing the masters as well. Goodness me.
Yes, very, very interesting to study it. And, you know, it was quite hard work, but it was, you know, we weren't allowed to do anything else. So being a study officer was quite useful, actually.
It's quite a good time to be doing something like that, I imagine, in the lockdown.
Yeah.
Quite an appropriate time. You can't, as I say, you can't do a lot else. So why not? Okay, so you're here to talk about the potager gardening today. So those of us, or those in the audience that do not haven't heard of the term potager garden, can you explain the concept and how it can sort of support sustainable gardening and the ecosystem within the garden?
Yeah. So Potager gardening is used by the French. It was originally created hundreds of years back in monasteries and in the gardens of the sort of the gentry castle gardens, to grow their vegetables. And they used a lot of herbs, both for medicinal properties and because I think they learnt the ancient wisdom of how these flowering herbs and the aromatics of them both attract beneficial insects and pollinators and repel unwanted pests and diseases. So they tended to grow their vegetables alongside lots of herbs and also alongside lots of flowering plants for the same reason. And they often divided their land into quite organized, symmetrical shapes and segments, and used raised beds as well. And this can be seen in its sort of greatest form, if you want to say, in the gardens of Villandry in France, which are, ginormous. A slightly scary example of potager gardening, but potager gardening in its essence, a potage in French is soup, and so a potager is where you grow all of the ingredients you need for your daily soup. So the vegetables, any vegetables in season, plus herbs, and whatever you can get really for your soup. That was the start of every meal in France in those days.
So very practical way of gardening, as well as I say, working all the plants working together. They're all seasonal, so they're all going to be sort of growing well at the same time of the year and everything. So it's a really nice way of doing. And it's actually a lot of the way that the organic gardens and the, as I say, sustainable gardening and everything is going, which is really nice. Everything's called seasonal, everything works together. So it's quite a nice way of growing.
Yeah, I mean, from my point of view, I guess because I was a garden designer for a long time, I'm slightly fussier than some people are about how my vegetable garden or my kitchen garden looks, and I just wanted it to be a really beautiful space. Yeah. So I had seen these potager gardens and thought, that they provided the answer to that balance between growing healthy vegetables without sort of chemical inputs, by using the companion plants and other methods. Exactly. They incorporated many permaculture and organic kind of methodology in there as well. Mm-hmm. No dig and own composting, of course. But yeah, the layout as a designer is attractive, and so we use things like vertical interest. So we have obelisks or arches. We position the beds in a way that is, often very symmetrical. In other gardens, mine are very symmetrical, but you do get round ones, mandala shapes, and the effects of, I guess, that design layout is that it just gives a very pleasing aesthetic effect. Yeah. You've got the use of the flowers as well, bordering the beds, which are not only used for the companion planting, but for their beauty and their aesthetics. So overall, it's a lovely place to be. And let's face it, that's a very important part of our gardening, that we enjoy it so much, and also that it's giving mental health as well as our physical health in growing without chemicals and as organically as possible. Yeah. So for me, that sort of, it's kind of ordered chaos. Lots of people do use a lot of box hedging and keep it very trimmed and everything. That's a bit too much work for me.
No, exactly. That's exactly how I feel about it as well.
But I use masses of calendula and marigolds and alliums to line the edges of the beds, and and of course the herbs, the evergreen herbs, provide structure, permanent structure all year round. Yeah. So you've got rosemary and lavender and thyme, and that's great in the winter, when there's not much else happening.
No, that's it. I do love that. And my vegetable patch in particular is there's not a lot of straight lines involved in my garden, except for the fact I've got raised beds, which are square. That's the as straight as they get, and a pathway that goes down through the middle. That's about as square as my garden gets. And everything is planted in and around where it fits. There's the companion planting are mostly to all edible flowers as well. So they're all they look lovely, they look beautiful, and they complement as well and support the garden. But you can eat them. So I like the idea of having lots and lots of colour in the garden, not just, as I say, for beauty, but beauty is important, but actually supporting the garden as well.
We have very, very few slugs and snails because of the biodiversity. So we've got so many birds and hedgehogs and things like that they're coming and taking care of a large part of that. And then I guess people don't realize how much those companion plants do work as repelling aphids or whitefly. They also attract types of wasps that can feed on caterpillars, which is rather nasty.
Lovely, isn't it? But it's like nearly an out of sight, out of mind. They're working so hard sort of in the background. They're just sorting everything out and keeping everything moving, and they're supporting each other, that you don't see it until you see a problem, and then you realize there's been like a knock-on effect. So where it sort of all works nicely like that, you just take for granted that you haven't got any pests in the garden, you haven't got any slugs and snails, or there's very minimal. You don't want to eradicate them, obviously, and otherwise that would have the next effect, which is not good. But to have less of them, so you don't notice the damage. But as soon as you start noticing the damage, that's when you see it, sort of thing.
Yeah, that's right. And I have had an ecologist visit the land, and he has, made the comment that you can tell that there have been no chemicals used here for large years since we've been here, because the amount of native bees and insects that he could count within the first 5 minutes were just so high. And I've definitely seen an increase in the bird population as well since we've been here, because I do the RSPB.
Oh yes. Yes, I am a big fan. Am I right in thinking that you create or offer a course to help people create their own potager garden and growing food more sustainably in your business? Would you like to talk a bit more about that?
We do. We have so here on our land, we've got a small business called the Sustainable Garden, and we offer courses and consultancy in ecological, wildlife friendly gardening methods, how to help people to do that. And one of the courses we offer is called the English Potager Garden, Growing Sustainable Food with Style. Basically, what we've been talking about, how using those old methods and that stylish French way of laying out the kitchen gardens is something that I've incorporated into my vegetable and fruit garden. And I show people how I've done it and how they can try to do it in their own garden.
That's really helpful, because a lot of people, as much as following advice on a video or talking to you at maybe a show or something, or coming to the gardens, but actually being told how they can do it themselves is so much more help. And having that kind of advice on hand, it's having a course on it is so much more effective, but it's not the right word, but you know what I mean. It's
it is more effective. I think it's nice for people to actually have a real example that they can look at. We do look at pictures of other people's or famous potager gardens from around the world, and we also I ask them if they'd like to do a sort of rough plan measurement of their allotment or their garden or wherever they'd like to site their potager, if they were to be able to go ahead with it. And at the end of the day, try and give them a little bit of a pointer on how they can get that going.
So if you wanted to give us a quick rundown of how people can find out more and where they need to go to, if they would like to follow you on social media, if you can just let us know. I will link all of the links as well in the description of this video, and anywhere else that I can find somewhere to link you, I will link you there. But if you can give us a quick rundown now, that'd be wonderful.
Okay. Well, thank you, Josie. So the website is thesustainablegarden.com, and I've got Facebook page under The Sustainable Garden. The Instagram account, there are two actually. There's one which is the.sustainable.garden, and there's also the English Potager Garden. Yeah, so those are the main ones we use, and the courses are, the website is quite detailed. It has lots of descriptions of potagers, of sustainable gardening, gallery of things I've done in the past and of the things I grow here, and then a courses page with all the different courses on there, and also a page on places to stay, because it's we are a bit further away than, a bit far away for some people, but it's a lovely part of the world to holiday in. So
we can make a weekend of it.
Make a weekend of it. Absolutely.
I love that. That's amazing. Fabulous. Okay, so say I'll all those links I'll put so it's easy to find, so you don't have to worry if you're watching. You have to take notes. I will link them everywhere, so it's fine. So yes, thank you very much for joining us today. It's been great hearing all about the contribution to the care of the planet and sustainable gardening. So we have enjoyed this, and I've loved the chat. Wherever you're watching today, if you found value in today's video, give us a thumbs up wherever you're watching from. If you're watching on YouTube, click the subscribe button. Give us a thumbs up, click the subscribe button to see more from myself, Gardening Naturally with Green Fingertips, and to support the channel. So that's what we're here for. Thank you again to Charlotte, and we will catch you next week on the next episode of Natural Gardening Live. Thank you very much for joining me, and I'll see you then. You can find out more Green Fingertips goodness over in our membership at green-fingertips.co.uk/membership to find out more. Keep up with all the latest news by following me on social media. That's green_fingertips. And follow me on YouTube to watch all my latest videos. Thanks for joining me, and we'll see you